All right, let me type a message here to pin. I am going to make a coffee. I'll be right back. Boink. Pin message. Turn on the white noise. And I will be back really quick. I'm making a coffee. I'll be less of a zombie. Oh, that rhymed. All right. All right, so I'm just boiling the water. I have to leave to make the coffee, but tell me who is here so I'm not just speaking to somebody that is possibly listening that just wants to use things I say against me, and I'm just like talking to you, oh, so happy. Are there any Hollywood sharks out there? Oh, wait, yes, there are. They might be sleeping right now. No, they'd be up during the nighttime hours. Of course they would be. They'd be sucking blood right now. And then going back into their coffins. All right, I'll be right back again. All right, I am back. So, if there's anybody, well, there is, can you comment in the comment section if you know about me, or if you know me and if I know you, or if you don't, do so and I will get to know you. My camera is covered right now, and at 3:27 in the morning, not even having a coffee yet, it's a pretty good idea to have it covered, I say. But anyway, we're gonna go over some audiobook or something. Hey Dragon X Rad 76. What is your name so I know what to call you? I have that Speechify thing again. I was able to get a new account and actually be able to have the good voice again. Gotta see if it's still like that. Probably not. I'll have to sign in with another account.
My stomach heaved.
Yep. Nope, that one's crap. You log out of that and create a new one just as quickly.
The voice AI assistant you've always wanted.
All
Sound
right.
families, talks, and answers with voices.
Good morning. It's 3:28 here right now in Toronto. I had Mussy or Moosey, whatever his name is, however it's pronounced, from the Isaiah Silva case. He's here in Toronto as well, and he's messaged me on my channel here. So I'm hoping he replies again. I'm not afraid of Sam Luffy. I mean Sam Goofy. 8:28 there, nice. Yeah, I can't fall asleep. And yeah, I got paid, so I got some weed, and now I'm going to go over a book and pick up where I left off on this with everybody else, which were the books like Love Kills by Hank Harrison. Oh, nice. Mads, nice. 9:30. We're all in different time zones. It's like we're all in different dimensions. But how we could all commit a crime together? How did you commit a crime at 9:30 and he committed a crime at 8:28 and he committed a crime at 3 in the morning and you all did it together? No, I'm kidding. Sarcasm. It's funny. Right? Isn't that weird? I'm just going over this Speechify thing again, signing up. Huh. Let's see. I hope I don't have an account with this already. Fuck. I do too.
Victim. Silverman.
Silverman. Oh man. Log out.
The voice AI assistant
Get
you've always wanted.
started.
I'm the founder of Speechify.
I don't care. I'm talking about this. I'm not paying $98 for something to speak to me That's so stupid. I could just get a therapist. I'm not stupid too. They focus more on all the expensive clothing and jewelry they can wear and how good of a lifestyle they can feel they are living. Hey, Alborba, good morning. If I can't get this going really soon, then we're going with Mark Lanigan's book. Parts that we haven't went over a lot already. It's going to be pretty big in the future, I guess, when there's a lot of people saying, no, Mark Lanigan wasn't involved. Joe and Zach are lying, and Chris Todd, God, he altered things. He's lied before, Chris Todd, but I guess there's one good thing he's done, which is help bring out Mark Lanigan's name. I've done the research to help back it up with the Unsolved Mysteries tips and his autobiography, Tammy Hill, a whole lot of things. But, man, eventually it'll be like, well, they got it right first. If they care so much about that, maybe them being assholes to me will make them feel like more of an ass later on. That'd be kind of nice. Joe would agree too. For real? Okay. Let's go with Mark Lanigan.
One. Is this love? Lying on my couch at the Oakwoods one afternoon, I was talking with a friend on the phone, and Celine Vigil, the singer of Seattle band 7 Year Bitch, came up in conversation. Years earlier, Hole guitarist Eric Erlandson and I had gone to see the all-female band play in Seattle. I was instantly attracted to their singer, Celine. On stage, she was like a cross between a sexy cat and a female Iggy Pop. While we were watching them, Erlandson spotted the actress Drew Barrymore in the audience, and in a break between songs, he said, "I'm going to date that chick." I said, "I'm going to date that chick," and pointed to Celine up on the stage. While the show continued, Eric indeed approached and captured Drew Barrymore in conversation, and they looked to be getting along famously. Another friend of mine introduced me to a friend of his, Celine's husband. When she got off stage and came over to her husband, I was introduced to Celine as well. Her smile and incredibly smoky voice again reminded me of a big cat, and now I was twice as intrigued, but sadly, that was to be our last interaction.
Hey, Mike.
Newly clean and exceedingly horny, the memory of that night instantly sprang to mind. God damn, she is hot. I would love to hang out with her. Dude, I'm pretty sure that could be arranged. She's up in San Francisco making a record, split up with that husband a long time ago. In fact, I know for certain she's single, lonely, and you are her type. What, the junkie type who's been clean a week? No, the great singer type, a man. I asked him to give her my number. To my surprise, she called me a day later. We talked nonstop for what turned into a several-hour marathon. Just like that, I was completely hooked. By the end of the call, we were both saying shit like, "God, I wish you were here right now, and I can't fucking wait to see you." Her laughter, openness, and slightly discernible melancholic edge made me want to have her as soon as possible. The ease of our conversation, the shit I'd told her that I'd never told anyone before, throwing my usual suspicious nature to the wind, I knew she was going to be someone good for me. We made plans to get together that weekend. She was to fly down to Los Angeles and spend it with me. When she showed up that weekend, I found myself attracted to her in a way that had been a rarity in my world. I thought, is this what love is? I'd never felt such a powerful pull before. I fell hard and fast. In the vulnerable state of being clean for the first time in years, I gave myself over completely to this exotic, funny, and kind creature. I found everything about her irresistible, especially her laugh, her thoughtful sensitivity, the way she felt in my arms, and her voice. I found in Celine someone who had experienced deep sadness and loss, someone who wanted love and needed someone as much as I did. The The next weekend, I went to hang out with her in San Francisco, where she was also in the middle of making a record. Lying together on the floor of her room listening to music one night, Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs came on. She got up and began to dance in front of me. It was one of the most sensual and touching gestures I'd ever experienced. She came to stay with me again in Los Angeles, and as we sat together in the bathtub one night, she said something that cut to my very core. What happened to make you so sad? It hit me like a hammer. I realized that even at this moment when I felt as happy and comfortable with myself as I could ever remember being, the guilt and shame I wore like a noose around my neck was still obvious to this sensitive, intuitive woman. She saw right through me. I'm not sure I can honestly answer that. There's so much stuff I've buried away. If I gave it any thought, I might start crying or something. Against my will, my mind spent a quick minute going down the long list of damage I'd done to not only innocent people I hardly knew, but also those I'd known not at all, but who had suffered the misfortune of crossing my path. I shut my eyes. I'd been such a negative, toxic influence. I thought of all the things I did and did not do that hurt the people I loved the most, especially the people I'd lost. In a rare instant of raw, open vulnerability, I started to cry. She held on to me tightly as tears streamed out of my unopenable, burning eyes. In that moment, the rabid, disease-crazed dog I'd carried for years inside of me tore its way out through every barrier I'd put up around it. I'd never cried in front of anybody before. Grief over the years of pain I'd caused myself and others poured out in torrents. It was as much of myself as I'd ever shown anyone. Though I was gravely flawed with damage that ran as deep as the Mariana Trench, she accepted me without a moment's hesitation. It made me think that for the first time ever, maybe I had at last found the person who would understand, show me how to be human, and not judge me for all of my fucked up, self-serving misdeeds. It was something I'd never thought possible. Maybe this was who I'd always been waiting for.
Well, that was interesting. All I could think about was Kurt Cobain the entire time hearing that. It's good to keep going over it and really get this information in. I think I'm going to, because I'm understanding the whole Tom Grant thing more, the compromised situation he was put into, and still is in, I want to go over Tom Grant, Kurt Cobain interview. The 2015. Actually, those phone calls. You'll need to put on your subtitles for this.
How are you doing?
It's going to be too hard to hear. Just a sec.
A few days ago,
April 3rd, 1994, the day after Kurt went missing from the rehab in Marina Del Rey. And Courtney was staying at a hotel, the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills, and I had an office in Beverly Hills there at the time. So she contacted me and told me her husband was missing and gave me some vague details over the telephone. I didn't really know who she was. She said her husband was a rock star and all that. But she wanted me to come over to the hotel. So I did, and I took Ben Klugman, another investigator that was working for me, and the two of us went over there and met with her for the first time. And so that was 1994. By the way, the first time I was on your show, Alan, was 1995.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Wow. Yeah, and we'll get into some of the history of what happened behind the scenes with radio people and television people if they dare talk to you. But let's get that early background as you're giving them that. Go ahead.
Well, Ben and I had actually just worked on another case a few months earlier where a mother had reported her 18-year-old daughter missing, and from our initial interviews with the mother and the boyfriend, we were a little suspicious of that. I won't get into all the details of that, but we had a funny feeling about that one to begin with. And sure enough, that girl ended up dead in a dumpster a few weeks later, found by somebody walking through an alley. And then, of course, LAPD got involved. And when I mentioned something to LAPD about who we suspected, the guy said, yeah, my lieutenant told me the same thing. So we just come off of that case, and now we have another case where somebody's missing. And the first thing Courtney Love does when we walk in the door, she starts lying to us about all kinds of stuff, and even outright telling us about lies that she had planted in the media the night before. So whenever you have a missing person and you're dealing with somebody who has this real dominating personality and is an outright liar and tells us that she's lying and about certain things, and then says stuff to us that really didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, by this time, we knew it was Kurt Cobain. He was a multimillionaire. And she said, he has no friends. He has no money with him. I need to find him, really quick and everything. And just so much of the conversation just absolutely was nonsensical. So the red flags went up right from the beginning. We talked to her for about an hour initially, and then we had some plans to proceed from there. But as we left, and we're walking down the hall, I told Ben Klugman we were going to document this case really well. And so I began recording telephone conversations, every phone conversation I had with Courtney or anybody else involved in that case from that point on. And that's sort of how it proceeded. I tried to talk to the police. I eventually flew up. Before the body was found, I actually flew up to Seattle, and Kurt's best friend, Dylan Carlson, and I went through the house the night before the body was found. In fact, two times. So once the night before that, and then we went back again because Courtney wanted us to go back and try to find the shotgun. And I never knew anything about the greenhouse, about
Did he say to Courtney or cuz Courtney? Just a second.
the garage. And so once the night before that, and then we went back again because Courtney.
Okay. But he was there that night with Courtney, Dylan, Mark, and that's when Callie, Joe, and Jennifer and Bonnie were all leaving, getting in a car in the driveway and leaving, seeing the person in the red dress.
Wanted us to go back and try to find the shotgun. And I never knew anything about the greenhouse, about the garage. And the two times we were there were in the middle of the night. It was raining really hard. There was a spotlight shining in our eyes, and I was...
So she's wanting him to find the body, but first she has him buy heroin, and now he comes out exposing it, but really exposing why he bought the drugs too. Why didn't you just report the body?
Focused on the house to the right with the windows open and all the lights on inside, and looking for somebody walking around with a shotgun. So, and it turns out later we found out the police had been up there several times after we now know Kurt was dead. Other people had been there, including Callie, the guy that was living at the house. So I wasn't the only one that had been up there a couple of times and didn't know that Kurt was lying dead in the greenhouse. Other people that were familiar with the property and were there during the daytime didn't find it either. But by the time I'd gone up there, I'd had hours and hours of conversations with Courtney, and I'd gone back and forth to the hotel and everything. And then finally she said, we agreed that I should fly up there too. And when Dylan and I, on Friday morning, the 8th, Dylan and I were on our way out to the Carnation property that the Cobains owned when we heard on the radio that a body was found at the house. And I turned to Dylan, Kurt's best friend, who was sitting right next to me, and I said, what's the greenhouse? And he said, it's just a dirty little room above the garage. Naturally, we hit.
This would be Tom Grant lying and covering for himself, unfortunately covering for the killers. But he didn't know it was a suicide right away until months after.
Back towards the main house, or towards the property near Lake Washington, and when we got to the...
Sorry, he didn't know that it was a murder until months later.
Media was all over the place. The police were there and everything. And now, for the first time, I saw the property, and during the...
And Tom Grant wanted to avoid the media.
Headed back towards the main house, or towards the property near Lake Washington, and when we got there, the media was all over the place. The police were there and everything. And now, for the first time, I saw the property, and during...
Remember that scene in Soaked in Bleach where Jones like, that's the Associated Press. You don't want to speak to them. Stay away from them. So Dylan's like telling them, Tom, who to avoid after having seen the body in the greenhouse on Thursday, April 7th at nighttime.
The daylight hours, and the greenhouse stood out like a sore thumb. I mean, it's right up at the end of the driveway, and like an A-frame house room on.
But you understand, at the time, Tom thought it was a suicide. If they're saying suddenly when they found the body, and Dylan's the one that got the gun, and he can go to jail, he's already a felon. Oh my God. Tom could go along, okay, the electrician is coming in the morning on Friday, April 8th. He's going to find the body anyway, and the media will be here then. Especially when he's already suspicious of them, and he has just bought them drugs at like every dope house, and all that's even on audio recording.
Top of the garage. And later investigation of
Bob, finally, hey, good morning.
Course, and when I went in that house, the greenhouse, I discovered it was a 19 by 22 foot room that was not a small, dirty room. It was very clean, and Dylan had...
Looks like there's a mannequin or something in here. Wow.
Described it to me as just a little room where they store lumber and stuff. So he acted like it wasn't that important.
I looked down on the ground and I seen something that looked like a mannequin or something. There's a statue in here. That's what it was. That wasn't about the in utero statue like we are led to believe.
But yet he had no reaction to the fact that a body was found up there. And that kind of threw me off a little bit. Dylan also was a heroin addict, and that was one of the reasons why he hung out with Kurt Cobain.
Doesn't this sound weird? Yeah, we're allowed to have that rehypnol on us. It's actually legal. Oh. Wow. Yeah.
And the two of them together, and they'd known each other for a long time. But I was really kind of surprised that he had really no reaction to the fact that they found the body up there. So that raised some more red flags, of course.
I think this is what Kurt Cobain would have been seeing in his vision, his dream that he had about being killed and a police officer being involved in it. An ex-police officer helping them cover it up, not knowing that Kurt was actually killed at that time until later on. And then he started to go in public about what he found out with the case, but he was also compromised in some ways, a big way.
I immediately contacted the police and told them that I was in the house the night before, assuming they'd want to talk to me right away, because being an ex-LA deputy sheriff and detective with the sheriff's department, I would have wanted to talk to anybody whenever a dead body shows up who was in that house the night before immediately. And they just kind of put me off like it was no big deal. And, well, come on into the station at 3 o'clock this afternoon. If we have some time, we'll talk to you. So all of these things just kind of, I didn't know whether it was a suicide or whether it was a murder or anything else. I just knew something was wrong. In fact, I tended to believe that he had committed suicide. Actually, for several months, I was more inclined to believe that it was a suicide, but there...
See right there. Look at it from the beginning of when everything happened. So if you're covering seeing the body the day before the media does, because you're manipulated into doing so, and you think it's already a suicide anyway, you don't think you're hiding a murder, but then over time you're like, oh shit, there was a lot more to that night and the nights before. And so Tom's exposing it, but at the same time hiding things.
Were so many things that didn't make any sense. I knew I had.
Right? It's like the Isaiah Silva case from 1994.
To keep looking into this and get some answers to some questions and find out, well, if this was a suicide, then why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why did she tell us this, et cetera, et cetera? So it took me 7 months before I went public, before I was completely convinced that it was a murder. I didn't just jump out there as a typical conspiracy nut and start yelling, murder, murder, murder. It took me 7 months before I was willing to do that.
I'm going to note that. It took Tom 7 months until he decided that it was a murder and to go public with it as well, period. At first, he thought it was a suicide, period. So seeing the body and thinking it's a suicide, you're not thinking you're covering up a murder right then and there, period. He came to that conclusion months later, period. She uses PIs. Luckily, Tom's the only one that's had guts to go against her, even though she's blackmailed him and trapped him in this. This is from 2009, April.
One of the tweets we got from C. Leftwich, I think it is. It says, I knew one of the police officers that responded to that scene. There's an amazing period back then. We just got done talking about the amazing grunge scene from the Northwest with Peter Blecka. And because of Nirvana and the other bands, radio formats changed. The grunge scene lasted, nearly a decade? Kind of petered out. It maybe waned a little bit. But Nirvana today lives on. And even though it's been so many years, you still have people, especially around 13, 14 years old, kids growing up still wondering about Kurt Cobain. The website, by the way, CobainCase.com. CobainCase.com. Go to YouTube, search Tom Grant. In fact, Tom, I guess that's all they have to do to find the documentary. Just search your name, right? On
yeah,
YouTube?
But it would be probably better to go to your website because I sent you the link, right. And there's several different things that say Project Unplugged and Tom Grant if you just do that search. The direct link to the YouTube that I put up myself is the one that I sent you that you'd probably have on your website.
Right, we're going to
work. You'll find it one way or another. Or if you go to CobainCase.com, there's a link on the left-hand side, too, you can click on that will take you to the YouTube video.
I'm going to play a little clip from your documentary. The audio is not from original tapes. It's from tapes you got from me and other things. But as you started, after 7 months of doing the investigation, and you started to go public, Gil Gross, who was on CBS radio at the time, or was it ABC? I'm not sure.
CBS, yeah.
He was on CBS. He really broke it nationally. This is where I heard Tom Grant on the radio. I immediately got in touch with you, Tom. That started a whole series of events. Let me play a clip from your YouTube documentary, and we'll explain what it is all about. You'll hear me, and you'll hear some other talk show hosts in it. Here we go.
And next thing I know, popping up from newspapers and TV stations, get a call from the Cobain estate. Whatever the hell.
And he had to be careful about what he brought out there. What he put out there.
That is, his money's calling me. It's the estate. I don't know what that means. The front lawn is calling me. The jockey holding the lantern on the front lawn is giving me a call. I don't know what that means. I'm getting a call from the estate. We need lawyers. Oh, yeah, okay, we're lawyers. At the same time, I got a lawyer in L.A. and a lawyer in New York. And the first thing they ask from the film, what do they have to be afraid of is, are you recording this? And I go, well, no. And what I don't say is, being a reporter, of course, I'm keeping copious notes.
And I want you, before you even think about calling in tonight, listen to Tom Grant, the man who's going to be on for the entire 2 hours. He is a respected private investigator. He's from Beverly Hills, California. Courtney Love hired this investigator to find Kurt Cobain after he left the rehab center. He started to notice inconsistencies. He started to notice that things just didn't add up. Okay, we're having some technical glitches here. Let this continue. This is from the documentary on YouTube that is up. Tom Grant just put up.
If I were to bring you the story, at no point did they say, don't put this on because the man's alive. At no point did they even ask, by the way, what did he say? They kept saying, well, we don't know what you said. You know that. They never said, so what did he say?
First, though, we do have to take care of suppressing business because we've had, I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say a lot of phone calls this morning that, you're not exaggerating at all. A lot of phone calls this morning who are looking for some sort of follow-up on what we devoted the entire show to yesterday, which was a private investigator who was in talking about the death of Kurt Cobain.
It's interesting. A few brave talk show hosts that tried to do a show on what we're doing tonight actually found that there was a lot of suppression. There were lawyers that would call the radio station and the network and say, don't do it. They did it.
Yeah. So, did you hear me about the MUSSAY guy involved in the Silva case that stopped Sam Luffy from kidnapping Isaiah in the vehicle? He's from Toronto, around where I am, and he's been responding to a video in the comments. You can find his username if you find it. It's in the Isaiah case on this channel. I hope he responds back, but there's been nothing more.
Anyway, because their lawyers, like Gil Gross at the CBS radio network, said, go ahead. What you're about to do makes sense. That's a little clip from the YouTube documentary Tom Grant has up. Boy, what a firestorm we started then, huh?
Well, that was the thing. I was kind of naive about the way the media works and the way this whole process works as far as, just telling a true story to the public. And Gil Gross was the first one to not be scared away by threats from attorneys and phone calls and letters and everything else. And that did break the ice. But from that point on, it got really, really difficult if it wasn't for you. You put me on, first of all, and we did I think the initial show was 2 hours. And then Courtney Love had her people take out a full-page ad in the media, and this will show in the documentary, too. There's a photograph of it, and some of the lines will pop out that's on that page, threatening anybody in the media to sue them if they give me a platform to speak, basically. So any radio talk show host, any television show, anybody that allows Tom Grant to tell his story is going to be sued. That's basically what the article said. You ignored that, and you went ahead. You had me on your show over and over again when everybody else was backing off because they didn't want to get involved in potential lawsuits or whatever. That you were the only person that had me keep coming back. I mean, I've done a couple of shows a couple of times, but you had me keep coming back time and time again until gradually these people on television and in other media outlets started seeing, hey, they're not doing anything. Alan Handelman's having him back over and over again. He's still coming on strong, telling the story and saying stuff that they threatened to sue him over, and they're not doing anything.
Well, pause right there. Just remember your thought because we have a hard break here, but this is an interesting place to pause. Just remember, because what happened shortly after the period he's talking about, NBC contacted Tom Grant, did an unsolved mystery, then Dateline, then the books, and a whole lot more. We're going to continue. The question is, was Kurt Cobain murdered? About Nirvana, we're talking about Courtney Love, what makes her tick, and an investigation that maybe you've heard about, read about, several books out, Unsolved Mysteries, Dateline, but it was a rough going in the beginning. As Tom Grant, the first investigator to get onto this case, started to look at Courtney in a lot of ways, and wait till you hear the evidence as we get into that and conversations he had. But where he left off right before the break, we were talking about, well, Jill Gross had him on the show. I had him on the show. You were about to talk about how you mentioned how afraid everybody was. I'll share some stories, but go ahead, Tom Grant, and continue where you left off.
Well, that was the thing. After that full-page media article came out, it was published in a magazine that.
Yeah, they know how to use the system against somebody. And it looks like it hasn't changed since the 90s. They know how to just keep doing it in the same ways.
Is sent to all media stations and everything. It's not something you would buy off a stand, but it is something that every radio station and TV station would get. And I talked to several people who had anticipated having me on one show or another, and then they said, well, our attorneys have said we better wait on this for a while. So I knew it had an effect, and the phone calls stopped, except for yours, and you plunged forward and took a really brave stand as far as I'm concerned. And to me, I've told you this before, you're my hero in this whole thing, because if it wasn't for you pushing forward, nobody else had the guts to do it, and it wouldn't have been aired anyplace else. Two books wouldn't have been written, the film wouldn't have been done, and then of course the media tour that we did in LA. I mean, I've been interviewed by Matt Lauer now. I've been on Court TV. I've been on a ton of television stations from New York discussing this case, and none of that ever would have come about if you wouldn't have given the time and the effort, put the time and the effort, and risked your own neck, so to speak, by continuing to allow me to air my point of view. And I mean, that's a freedom.
Yeah, by the system and his family. Even now his daughter participating in like illegal stuff. And being like, this is what Courtney does, dressing up as clowns, but she never went to the police and said that. If she knows about her criminal acts, she should get her in trouble. I mean, her dad cared a lot about her. Unfortunately, and maybe it's being too straight up, but I believe 100% that Kurt cared about her a lot more than she does about him. And that sucks. Because he could have... That's not the way I seen it going. I thought it would be the opposite. The suicide narrative made it look like they could cover it up and be soft and gentle about it. But then when you've seen what's really going on in their lives, especially with Isaiah Silva, it's like, holy crap. And that's so many people, even Isaac Cappy and so many others, let down by the system and by their own family and friends. And he was die hard for Francis. That's what really gets me. He was betrayed by everyone. And say, we're all his children, spiritual children. Daughters and sons and brothers and sisters. Yeah, it's the same thing that happened in '94, only now with the internet as advanced as it is.
The speech is all about. I'm not claiming that people have to agree with me, but I should be allowed to air my point of view, and you allowed me to do that.
Well, let me, first of all, thank you for that. And I remember the time, very, very well. It was a very pivotal time, especially as the Sunday night show was strong in syndication at that time. That was where we first started. But see, the thing is, unlike a lot of shows, one of the commitments for that show is to serve the rock culture.
Yep.
I remember a couple times talking to the lawyers at the company I was working for then, and it was so strong on their side, they said, well, go ahead, go for it. And so, yeah, I did. There's some stories I'll share along the way that because I had you on, I was prevented access from a couple of big bands for a while, briefly. But yeah, and then so what? So eventually, after I've had you on, then the big media starts to talk about this Courtney Love. It's interesting. You asked her many times to sue you. You said, Courtney, if it's not true, sue me. And she wouldn't sue you. You begged her to. And she's threatened.
If I was Isaiah, I would have called the police and just said, "There's people outside surveilling my place, watching my home, and it's really suspicious." Say nothing about the clown outfits or anything, and then have the police come by unexpectedly, and the police will catch those people driving around in weird clown masks and everything, and be like, "What are you doing, sir?" Flip it on them like that. That's what I'd do.
That she'd sue, but nothing happened. What do you think's going on with her?
What I had been telling everybody, and I didn't expect them just to take my word for this, but of course I had to say what I believed, is that she will never sue me over, or anybody involved in this case where I would have to get involved and get on the witness stand, because there's this thing called depositions. And in a deposition, you get to ask the attorneys get to ask more questions in a deposition, and the field is more wide open for questioning than it is when you're in a courtroom on a witness stand. So a deposition is a fact-finding mission. If she were to ever file a lawsuit against me or about somebody that had me on the air, whether it be radio, TV, or anything, we're going to get to depose her. And her attorneys, I know, her attorneys would never allow her to be deposed, because then we get to ask her all of these hard questions that she's always refused to even comment on. When she's doing an interview and it sounds like somebody's even headed in that direction, she'll just get up and walk away. In fact, there was a period of time where she was having people sign before interviewing her some type of a waiver saying they wouldn't ask any questions about Kurt Cobain's death. So,
what would you ask her? What would you ask her if you could cross-examine her?
Oh, boy. At one time I had a whole list of questions because I was doing a lot of radio interviews and people were asking me that. I don't have that in front of me.
No, it's okay.
I did type out a whole list of questions that would really nail it down. Of course, she would kind of talk like a politician and talk around it. I mean, I've tried that with her on the phone, and she just manages to change the subject real quick and get off onto something else, So
what you got to understand is you knew Courtney to the point that she would do drugs in front of you, knowing who you were. I mean, she was completely wasted a lot of times. You would go and talk to her, right?
Yeah, and one time I remember I was talking to her on the phone, and I have this on tape, and you could hear the rubber band snap up, and you could hear her doing heroin and the little moan that you get after you first shoot up and everything. And what was so funny is a few days ago, or a few days after that, I was talking to her again, and she said, "Oh, yeah, I haven't done any heroin since Kurt died." And I said, "Courtney, you just did it the other day while we were on the phone." And she said, "Oh, well, nobody's perfect," All the story, it was amazing to look at what was coming out in the media, because since Courtney Love was a celebrity, at that point, mainly because she was Kurt Cobain's wife, or widow, that since she was, everybody wanted to talk to her and interview her. Basically, she was allowed to just tell whatever story she wanted. And there was so much stuff going out there that I knew just was absolutely not true, that Courtney was feeding to the media, but I was there. I was with her. I went back up to Seattle. We went on a drive together. We went out to the Carnation property together, and then a bunch of stories came out in the media about how we found, when we went up there, we found tire prints proving that Kurt was there and all that, and that wasn't true. Anyhow, it went on and on, just watching the lies and the phony stories fed to the media. And then when I get on there and I just try to tell the truth from my experience and my opinion, and draw my conclusions based on the evidence that I've seen and the statements that I've heard, it's like I'm treated like, you're just trying to make a buck off of this. And Courtney Love, with knowing Kurt for 2 years, made millions off of his death, whereas if there would have been a divorce, which is part of this whole outline of the case, They were facing a divorce. They were in the process of separating. People didn't know that at the time, but it's accepted as a fact now. But if Kurt would have left her, she would, at the very most, have inherited everything, half of everything. And her record album, which was coming out in a couple of weeks, would have just gone down the tubes because everybody loved Kurt Cobain and people didn't really know that much about Courtney, and those that did didn't like her a whole lot. But if Kurt Cobain commits suicide, and Courtney even said this in a telephone conversation right after Kurt's death that she had with me that I have on tape. She said something like, the sympathy goes to me, and who knows, it might even help sell records,
Man.
Yeah, that's on the website. You can listen to those recorded conversations on CobainCase.com. Just go to the audio link, and you'll hear a lot of excerpts from those conversations there. And there'll be more in this documentary as we go along.
Yeah, well, this is a great place to pause. When we come back, we will talk about the evidence pointing to Courtney Love. Again, what makes her tick, and we'll go back in time and talk about some of the pressure that she put on and the clout that she had for a while. 866-482-1011. I know we're spending a lot of time laying groundwork here because this is the first time a lot of you are hearing it, unless you've heard them on the Sunday night show. And the last one we did of those was back in, 2004. So anyway, we're going to take a break. It's Tom Grant, 866-482-1011, or go to twitter.com, look for Alan Handelman, or search If It Rocks.
Come on, well, follow your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
What really happened to Kurt Cobain, that mystery lives on in books, documentaries, unsolved mystery. And it's Tom Grant that keeps it alive. He did the great investigation. I'm telling you, the evidence would stack up about 8 inches, maybe more, just the stuff that I collected back in the 90s, between 96 and I guess 2004. Unbelievable. So let's, in this segment, and then we're going to have a whole hour after that, talk about some of the strongest evidence pointing to Courtney Love.
Okay, I'll go through the outline that just kind of touches on the main pieces of evidence, and then I'll finish up with the strongest piece of evidence that actually proves that Kurt Cobain was murdered. First of all,
just so you pace yourself, so you know we got another break in about 5 minutes. So just pace yourself. Know we have a break coming. Go ahead.
I think I can get through the outline in that time. Yeah.
Good.
As mentioned before, people didn't realize it at the time, but Courtney and Kurt were facing a divorce. Right after Kurt was found dead, when I came back to L.A., Courtney's own attorney, Rosemary Carroll, who had an office up the street from me, called me up. And when I walked in the door, she put her head down and started shaking her head and said, do you think Courtney was involved in this, Tom? Because, she called me a few weeks ago, and she wanted me to get the meanest, most vicious divorce attorney I could find. Now, I'm getting this from Courtney's own attorney and Kurt's attorney. I mean, she worked for both of them. But she said, I love Courtney and I love Kurt, but I have to tell you this. And so she was suspicious, and you'll hear that in the recorded conversations too that I had between Rosemary Carroll and myself. Someone was using Kurt's credit card. Attempts were made on that credit card even after we now know Kurt Cobain was dead. But as soon as it was mentioned on the radio that they found the body, the attempt stopped. We got a record from the credit card company that shows that. And that's the same credit card that he used to book his ticket back up from L.A. to Seattle. But yet it wasn't on the body, and somebody was trying to use that card. The police never bothered to try to even track that down. Cobain was in fear of his life. He lived on a property, and with his fame and everything at that time, it was a fairly new house that they just moved into a few months before. And it was very accessible to the public. They lived right next to a small park with just bushes separating them. There was no fence. Anybody could walk right up the driveway. He purchased that shotgun for safety. That's what Dylan, his best friend, Dylan Carlson, told me. And the shotgun, when he was found dead, was loaded with 3 shells. You only need 1 shell if you're going to shoot yourself in the head.
Yeah.
You don't need to load it with 3. And it was light load because Kurt, if he was there to protect the property and scare somebody off, he wasn't there to kill somebody. He wanted to scare them off, so he deliberately purchased light load and a 20 gauge shotgun. I'm sorry, not a 12 gauge shotgun. So, and then the police claimed there were no legible fingerprints on the shotgun. The fact is, the police reports indicate themselves, and this is proof. It's not just something that I'm saying. It says.
Yeah.
It says in the police reports, they didn't even send that shotgun out for printing until 30 days after the body was found. But yet at the same time, they were telling the media and they were telling anybody that would ask them that they were investigating this as a potential homicide, but they concluded it was a suicide, but it was investigated as a potential homicide. No, I'm sorry. If you're a detective, a homicide detective, and you think there's any possibility that this is a homicide, the first thing you do is get that shotgun printed. You don't wait 30 days to get it printed. There was no suicide note at the scene. The police reports refer to it as a suicide note, but it was never released to the public. I tricked Courtney out of getting a copy for myself of that note, and she was kind of upset about when it happened, and I kind of explained that in the case study manual or online how I did that. But once I got a copy and was able to see this was not a suicide note. It was a note written to Kurt Cobain fans basically saying he didn't want to perform anymore. He was going to quit the music business and go back east. That was one of the things Courtney was upset about.
Welcome back. We're talking about the murder mystery, and I'm calling it a murder mystery because at this time it is still unsolved, even though officially they call it a suicide. So what's going on? You thought Kurt Cobain committed suicide. The first investigator on the scene is Tom Grant. That's who we're talking to. He thinks it's murder. He actually did extensive research on this, and eventually the police, not even looking at some of the evidence he's about to tell you, and we're just starting that part of the show, determined it was a suicide. We'll talk about that. Any questions you have, 866-482-1011, or go to twitter.com. We are trying to lay some groundwork here so you get a little bit of the background. So, Tom, continue. You talked about the suicide note that really wasn't a suicide note. We were about to talk about the two different kinds of handwriting on the suicide note. And all this can be seen, and you can hear all the tapes that he has on CobainCase.com, and we'll have it on our website and the links, and the documentary is on YouTube. We'll have that link also. So go ahead where you left off.
Yeah, the body of this so-called suicide note is very, very long, first of all, which is unusual for any kind of a suicide note. But it's very clear that it's addressed to Kurt Cobain fans, not to Courtney and to Kurt, like the police said in their report. At the very bottom, there's a, what do you call it at the bottom of the note? There's a word for it. I can't think of it, but there's a footnote. There's a footnote to Courtney and to Francis. And it's written in very much larger print, strange handwriting. It doesn't look like it belongs there. And even of that, there's only one part of a line which indicates anything at all about possible suicide. And that line could also indicate that he's just leaving, period. That it says, keep going, Courtney, for Francis, who will be so much happier without me. Okay? Well, first of all, even if Kurt did write that, which it's so questionable when you look at this handwriting, it just doesn't fit in with the rest of the note. But even if he did write it, that still doesn't make it a suicide note. It might mean that he was, and there was a lot of talk about this, that he was going to move back east and work with Michael Stipe and all that, and they were going to separate, and obviously Courtney would probably get custody of the child. But I don't believe for a second that he even wrote that. But no matter how you look at that letter, whether you think Kurt wrote the whole thing or not, there's nothing in that letter that says, I'm going to kill myself. There's nothing that indicates it's a suicide note. But yet it was a labeled a suicide note, and, nobody expected it to ever be seen in public. And that was only because I tricked Courtney out of a copy of it and ran it off on her fax machine.
Was that when she was like in the bathroom doing drugs and you were able to grab it?
Well, we were upstairs talking, and I said, I heard you read this letter on TV, at the memorial service, and it sounded like you were saying that Kurt was writing this while he was laying in bed. And I said, when Dylan and I were up here, the bed was totally neat and clean and didn't look like anybody'd been there. And she goes, and I knew the truth. I mean, I was goading her into doing what she ended up doing, but she says, no, I meant, I was reading that I'm laying here in bed. I mean, that's what I said. I was laying here in bed while I was reading the note over, to the TV for everybody to hear. And I said, well, that's not what it sounded like to me. She goes, no. And then she reached behind her and grabbed this copy of the note and handed it to me. And instinctively, I said, oh, can I run down and run a copy off of this on your fax machine downstairs? And of course, if she really wants me to investigate this like she claimed she did, what's she going to do? Say, no, you can't have a copy of that? And she kind of hesitated for a second and said, yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I ran down, got my copy really quick, and by the time I came back up, she was on the phone. And she says, I'll talk to you in a little while, Tom, if you could just go back on downstairs. And you could tell this is the first time in our relationship that she was upset with me and kind of, was angry. And I know it was because she didn't want that note to ever slip out and become public. The other thing that really got my attention was when I was reading an article in Rolling Stone magazine in December of '94, and she's telling the interviewer in that article that there was another note that Kurt left her, and that he left it under the pillows on the bed in the master bedroom. And so again, I have a recorded conversation where I'm questioning Courtney about this on the phone. I said, I read this article, and you're talking about another note. And there was no other note under the pillows on the bed. But Dylan and I tore that bed apart, looking between the mattresses. And, that's where we found a package of Rohypnol. And we looked under the bed for the shotgun. There was no note behind those pillows, like you said in the interview. And all she could say is, oh, yes, there was, Tom. But I know for a fact that it wasn't there. And if there was a second note that Kurt had left at the scene, that belonged in evidence. That should have been in the police reports. It should have been booked into evidence. She might retain a copy of it, just like the other note, but it was never mentioned in any police reports. At the very least, right there, she's withheld evidence from the police if it really did exist. And I do believe there was another note from Kurt, but it had nothing to do with the suicide, and she didn't find it under the so-called suicide. She didn't find it under the pillows. It was a note that he'd given her at some other point where he was explaining how he was leaving. In fact, she even quoted a couple of things in the Rolling Stone article about, I'm leaving, please don't follow me. I don't know where I'm going, but, there was nothing, again, in that letter, in the quotes that she gave to Rolling Stone about suicide. So there were two notes, supposedly, and I know that she didn't find another note behind those pillows. I know that personally. And if there was another note, it's just one more lie that she did during this whole process to the police. It should have been given to the police, and it should have been booked into evidence, and it would have been part of the reports. So moving ahead, most people were convinced that he committed suicide also from shows like Geraldo Rivera, who were merely reporting things that they'd heard or read somewhere. And Geraldo Rivera, I'll never forget, he said Kurt was barricaded inside the room and there was a stool wedged against the door and all this, Well, I don't blame Geraldo Rivera for that. He was just acting off of misinformation. But from the police reports, the Seattle police reports, when you take them and you read them, oh, by the way, the other thing, too, was that they say Kurt left his driver's license on top of his wallet for everybody to see, to be identified. And Rolling Stone wrote a really flowery article about that, how that's just like Kurt to do something like that, so to be sure that he could be identified. Well, the fact is, if you read the very police reports put out by the Seattle Police Department, the first officer on the scene picked up the wallet, which was laying on the floor, took out the driver's license, and put it on top of the wallet to take a photograph of it. That's how the driver's license ended up on top of the wallet. And that's in the Seattle police reports.
Right, Nirvana, like, are you cheating? No, but maybe I'm cheating, but no, I'm not cheating, but maybe. Kind of like that. Sorry, I've been reading along. It's just that I need to plug in my keyboard and like move it away so you don't hear me type.
Well, it was supposedly wedged against the door, and Sergeant Cameron had told me that personally also. When you read the Seattle police reports, you notice that the first officer on the scene saw that stool sitting in front of two unlocked French doors that just led out to the balcony that looked over the driveway. The stool that was supposedly wedged against the door, and Sergeant Cameron had told me that personally also. When you read the Seattle police reports, you notice that the first officer on the scene saw that stool sitting in front of two unlocked French doors that just led out to the balcony that looked over the driveway. So that's no indication of anybody being barricaded inside. The only other thing that comes close to being barricaded inside was the door was locked to the greenhouse from the inside. Okay. But it was a push and twist door lock, just like you have in a bathroom. So anybody could kill Kurt Cobain, walk out that door, push and twist the door lock, and pull it shut when they walk out of the room, and the door's locked. So there's absolutely no evidence that he was barricaded in that house or in the greenhouse, but yet for a month or two before the police reports were ever made public, that's the story that was circulated everywhere on TV and in the media and every article and everything.
I remember.
So, I mean, if that would have been true, I would have believed it was suicide too. Because how could somebody else be in there if he was barricaded in there and had a stool wedged against the door? But the fact is, the Seattle police reports report differently, and they've never bothered to clear that up, of course. But the reports are public; they're public record, and people can read that for themselves. Now, the most obvious and the hardest piece of evidence here is the medical evidence, the heroin overdose. It's 3 times a lethal dose of heroin. It was 1.52 milligrams per liter of heroin or morphine, because heroin becomes morphine once it's injected into the body. And research indicates that's 3 times a lethal overdose, even for a hardcore heroin addict. Now, when the medical authorities up there in Seattle and anybody else that wants to argue this issue on the other side and say, well, that doesn't really prove anything. It depends on his tolerance level and all that. That's kind of the story that you hear from the other side. But all I've done for the last 15 years, and believe me, I did it right from the beginning. I said, just show me one other case, one similar case where there's that kind of a heroin blood level and there's any evidence that a person would have had time to pick up a shotgun and put it in their mouth and pull the trigger. And I give an example even. A bunch of guys sitting around watching a football game on TV, and one guy gets up and he goes into the bathroom. He comes back out a few minutes later and he sits down on the couch and he keels over dead. That's a typical overdose story. There's hundreds of thousands of cases like that have happened in the United States and around the world over the last 20 or 30 years, with eyewitnesses that would have seen it and would have been in the police report. So there's plenty of documentation if it's there. And what I've said is, if you show me a case like that, then you've proven to me that Kurt had plenty of time to pick up the shotgun and shoot himself. Because if someone can walk out of a bathroom into a living room and sit down on a couch before keeling over dead, then obviously he would have had time to shoot himself up with heroin and then, put the shotgun in his mouth. But nobody, not one person, has ever come up with a single case. Not only that, but in 15 years, I've gotten emails, letters, and had some phone calls with some of these people, from doctors, from coroners, from nurses, from paramedics, from police officers, from detectives, attorneys, a couple of district attorneys, One even is a law professor. One of the emails I got was a law professor who sits as a judge pro tem in a superior court. And every one of these people have been supportive of the work that I've done. I have never gotten a letter from one of these professions ever that disagreed with this heroin blood level evidence that I'm talking about. So not only have they not provided a documented case with a similar heroin level and proof that somebody is capable of doing this, I've never even gotten a letter from a professional person that has dealt with this type of thing that disagrees with me. Not once in 15 years.
If we get calls from law enforcement or you're listening and you have an opinion, what you're listening to as far as evidence, is it convincing? 866-482-1011 or go to twitter.com. We're laying the groundwork, and when we come back, this is amazing to me, because with all this evidence and a whole lot more he didn't even get to yet, because he was from Beverly Hills and the Seattle Police Department didn't want some outside investigator, things kind of changed, and we're going to have to find out why didn't they want to look at your evidence. We'll talk about that. It's good to have you back.
Something in the Way. Who worked on that song with Kurt? I wonder who it was. Oh yeah, Kurt Cobain's murderer, Mark Lanigan. That was the Something in the Way all along. Yeah, too many. Well, they butt heads with Todd, but Betty people, when they realize Todd will talk to them even freely if he gets along with them, they just think that connection, that friendship is really cool. And they kind of feel like Kurt and helping him that way. And so they go along with it. But that leaves them blind to anything that Tom could have done wrong in the past. Specifically 1994 and upward, with covering up Thursday, April 7th, what exactly happened on that day, and not just giving reasons as to why you had drugs on you and why you didn't see the greenhouse, apparently. I hope they will be. They should. They definitely, I think they will be in prison, and we'll hear about it. The people that took the autopsy of Kurt Cobain in jail, ripping people off hundreds of thousands. I bet they would be in hundreds of thousands, if not 100,000 something they'd have already made. Because based on everything in the ripoff reports, they already made like over 50 grand. So that would be like prison time. That's crazy though, eh? That there's so many, like, I looked some of the people up. They are real people. And I messaged more of them. I was doing that on a live stream maybe like 3 days ago. But I messaged more on my own. Oh, yeah. The reason they look at emails and messages right away is to make sure, okay, nothing's going wrong. No one's threatening us with what we did wrong. Okay. And they'll respond if you're cool. But if you're someone saying you ripped me off, you're not going to get a response. Not from their WhatsApp account, not from anything. I don't know. I'm starting to think, I think back and forth on it. April 3rd, why does she put in that alibi saying that she was somewhere else and that she couldn't get she was walking the streets of LA looking for Kurt, when we know she didn't know. She knew that Kurt wasn't there in LA. She knew that Kurt was at the house because of Callie. So she's not walking around the streets of LA then. And for some reason on Sunday, April 3rd, the day of the murder, around nighttime, she wants there to be no calls transferred to her hotel room because she said she won't be there. She's walking around LA looking for her husband that's missing. And then there's the story of her being at the another story from her dad that we're told she was at a Babes in Toyland concert. Why are there all these fake stories of what she was doing on the exact day we find out 31 years later that Kurt Cobain was murdered? So now that we know she's lying about April 3rd so much, and we know that's the date that Joe has come to grips on it being. My gosh, it's so deep, and then you just forget it, and then it comes back. Yeah. So that Thursday, April 7th, that could have been even April 3rd, but screwed up more, and more of what we're not understanding yet. But isn't that weird? Huh. Isn't that weird? It makes me think that Courtney was there on the date of the murder, even if the eyewitness is not saying that. And I don't want to say that. But why would she know that Kurt's at home in Seattle and say that on Sunday the 3rd, she's walking around in the early morning hours looking for her missing husband in LA, and that her hotel room won't be taking calls? That's literally in the official narrative, the first narrative. Why would she be saying that she's walking around in the middle of the night on Sunday, April 3rd, early morning hours in LA looking for Kurt when she knew he's at home in Seattle? Does that make you think that she was there when he was killed? Oh my gosh, I just remembered that interview with Dylan and the car honk going off horn. And the fake OD by Courtney the day before she knew the body would be discovered, right? Makes her still look like she's in LA in a hospital, but then it came out she was never even in there. And she could have flown there back and forth and just got checked in, and they realized, oh, you don't even have illegal drugs on you, you can go. And that's what she did. That's what it looks like. Yeah, why, if she was so concerned about him, why didn't she find him, go up there and find him? Toot, 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 toot. Do you think she was there in the early morning hours of the murder? Because it sounds like the evidence points that she knew Kurt was in Seattle on Saturday, and then on Sunday she would have been somewhere else, and she's lying about where she was on that somewhere else day, which was Sunday, early morning hours when Kurt was murdered. So it looks like she was there, doesn't it? Doesn't the evidence look like that? Oh yeah, absolutely. And remember, she took Francis into the greenhouse after. There's that photo of her there on April 8th in the greenhouse holding Francis right in the door frame. And in front of her is Roddy Bottom. That's so personal. She would want to do that and see it, or at least take part in it happening. But isn't that weird? We find out 31 years later he died Sunday, April 3rd. And now we look over the first story, and it was Sunday, April 3rd. Courtney had to go out in the early morning hours because she was going around LA looking for Kurt. Meanwhile, we know, because of Tom Grant, that Callie had called her on Saturday and told her that Kurt was back home. Does that make it look like she was there, or is that just me going crazy? I really want an answer to that. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but sometimes I put things out and it's like I think too deeply about things and it's just wrong. So if you're creating an alibi for yourself on the date that your husband is murdered and you want him murdered, maybe she's one of the killers that were there. I feel like this is kindergarten. Of course she was.
If you just get in your car and wonder what we're talking about, this is Tom Grant.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. She knew Kurt was there on Saturday. And then in the early morning hours on Sunday, April 3rd, she's apparently walking around LA looking for Kurt when she knew the day before he was in Seattle and that he's still in Seattle. So why are you lying about what you're doing and that you don't know where Kurt is when you do know where Kurt was? Is she not just lying about not knowing where Kurt was? Is she possibly lying about where she was too? Or are we way off base? Yeah, no calls at the hotel. Sunday, April 3rd. I will be taking no more calls. Fake OD report before she knew the body would be discovered because she called the electrician. He had to reschedule. She did that on Tuesday, April 5th. He had to reschedule for Friday, April 8th. Fake OD, Thursday, April 7th. Oh, you and Kurt had a suicide pact. Oh, man, and you survived, Courtney. Oh, you're a hero. We love you. You guys didn't need to do that. Right, she could have went down on Saturday then. It's just I won't be there for the whole next day, you know. Let's see. I want to go over that again. The first narrative, and then we'll get back to that Tom Grant thing interview. Where's the first narrative? It's on Kurt Cobain Mystique Club Mystique. Okay, here it is.
The following is from the...
So this is the early narrative of Courtney having to be away from... Hey, Atlanta, we love you. This is the early narrative of Courtney having to be away from her motel on, ironically, the date that we now know to be Kurt Cobain's murder. When it took place. So let's listen to the 1994 narrative.
The following is from the June 1994 book Never Fade Away by Dave Thompson. On Sunday, April 3rd, according to a source close to the band, Courtney and Geffen arranged for private detectives to be hired to trace Kurt. It was their belief that he would probably head back to Seattle. Kurt was in fact already there. He arrived on Wednesday, March 30th, the same day he left the rehab facility, and contacted his old friend Dylan Carlson, guitarist with Olympia's band Earth, and the best man at Kurt and Courtney's marriage 2 years before. Kurt asked Dylan if he would go with him to buy a shotgun. He said he wanted it for protection, Dylan explained later, which seemed reasonable enough. So did Kurt's request that Dylan make. Worried, Dylan said that if he bought it in his own name, the police would simply come around and confiscate it. He and the Seattle Police Department had quite a history in that respect, as Dylan himself knew. The Taurus .380, which had been taken away just a couple of weeks before, had been registered in Carlson's name. It was also one of the guns which had been temporarily impounded the previous June. The pair set off for Stan Baker's gun shop on Lake City Way Northeast. Baker later remembered wondering, what the hell are those kids going to do with that shotgun? It's not hunting season. But it was not his concern either. Dylan purchased the weapon, a 16-pound Remington Model 11 20-gauge shotgun, and the two left the store. Dylan later asked Kurt if he wanted him to keep the rifle at his condo. Kurt told him no. That day was to be their last meeting. Where Kurt went from there may never be known for certain. Later on Wednesday, he was in a downtown gun shop buying a second box of shells. He did spend at least one night at a property he and Courtney had bought the previous year, a little north of Carnation, a township 40 miles northeast of Seattle. Courtney would tell Seattle's Post-Intelligencer newspaper that it looked as though he'd had company as well. Balled up by a fireplace in the still unfinished two-story house which the couple were building lay a blue sleeping bag which she had never seen before. A nearby ashtray overflowed with cigarette butts. Some she recognized as Kurt's brand, but as for the others, she'd not seen them before either. On Monday, the day after the private detectives were taken on, Courtney was interviewed by the LA Times' Robert Hilburn. She spoke of the horror of finding Kurt spread out on the floor in Rome, blue and still. I don't ever want to see him like that again. I thought I went through a lot of hard times over the years, but that was the hardest. It was the last scheduled interview she would do. The following afternoon, callers were informed by the hotel switchboard that her room was not accepting any calls whatsoever. An interview with the Seattle Rocket was canceled without warning, although Hole guitarist Eric Erlin.
Wait, was that in the afternoon on Sunday? So after the murder?
Like that again. I thought I went through a lot of hard times over the years, but that was the hardest. It was the last scheduled interview she would do. The following afternoon, callers were informed by the hotel switchboard that her room was not accepted.
I have to go way back in that just a sec. Always here, Elena. Sorry I haven't been live streaming for a while. I got really depressed over like the last 2 days, as you probably could tell. Just cutting the live stream.
Cigarette butts. Some she recognized as Kurt's brand.
Let me see.
Balled up by a fireplace in the still unfinished property he and Courtney meeting. Where Kurt went from there may never, and the two left the store. Dylan later asked Kurt if he wanted him to keep the rifle at his condo.
So they're saying in this early narrative that this is March 30th.
Kurt told him no. That day was to be their last meeting. Where Kurt went from there may never be known for certain. Later on Wednesday, he was in a downtown gun shop buying a second box of shells. He did spend at least one night at a property he and Courtney had bought the previous year, a little north of Carnation, a township 40 miles northeast of Seattle. Courtney would tell Seattle's Post-Intelligencer newspaper that it looked as though he'd had company as well. Balled up by a fireplace in the still unfinished two-story house which the couple were building lay a blue sleeping bag which she had never seen before. A nearby ashtray overflowed with cigarette butts. Some she recognized.
So they're saying that was Wednesday, April 6th. Thursday would be the date they all come down there. If they weren't already there on the 3rd.
As Kurt's brand, but as for the others, she'd not seen them before either. On Monday, the day after the private detectives were taken on, Courtney was interviewed by the LA Times' Robert Hilburn. She spoke of the horror of finding Kurt spread out on the floor in Rome, blue and still. I don't ever want to see him like that again. I thought I went through a lot of hard times over the years, but that was the hardest. It was the last scheduled interview she would do. The following afternoon, callers were informed by the hotel switchboard that her room was not accepting any calls whatsoever. An interview with the Seattle Rocket was canceled without warning, although Hole guitarist Eric Erlandson explained simply that Courtney was feeling unwell. He promised that he would try to reschedule the telephone interview.
So this only confirms her being there on Thursday, April 7th, the original narrative from 94, which goes in line with Dylan's statement to Maureen Herman. Yeah, they don't mention him. She was there on Thursday, April 7th with Tom then. That's being covered up. And why they bought the dope anyway. Tom didn't think it was a murder right away. He thought it was a suicide as well.
Interview for later that evening. He didn't. In fact, Courtney probably wasn't even at the hotel. Instead, she was combing the streets of LA, searching for her husband. Back home, Cobain's mother, Wendy O'Connor, was instituting a search of her own.
That was Thursday, April 4th, that fake report. That means this is April 3rd. Did you pick up on that? This is April 3rd then. There's no way she's walking around LA looking for Kurt, shouting his name or whatever, when she knows he's in Seattle and she knew the day before that. Let's go over that part again.
Filing an interview with the Seattle Rocket was canceled without warning, although Hole guitarist Eric Erlandson explained simply that Courtney was feeling unwell. He promised that he would try to reschedule the telephone interview for later that evening. He didn't. In fact,
Later that evening on Sunday, April 3rd. So they're talking about early morning right here. Right? Thanks.
He probably wasn't
and you're right, Bob.
even at the hotel. Instead, she was combing the streets of LA, searching for her husband. Back home, Cobain's mother, Wendy O'Connor, was instituting a search of her own, filing a missing persons report with the Seattle Police Department on Monday. Word had reached her
Let's go over
that her
that again.
son switchboard that her room blue and still. I don't ever want to see him like that again. I thought I went through a lot of hard times over the years, but that was the hardest. It was the last scheduled interview she would do. The following afternoon, callers were informed by the hotel switchboard that her room was not accepting any calls whatsoever. An interview with the Seattle Rocket was canceled without warning, although Hole guitarist Eric Erlandson explained simply that Courtney was feeling unwell. He promised that he would try to reschedule the telephone interview for later that evening. He didn't. In fact, Courtney probably wasn't even at the hotel. Instead, she was combing the streets of LA, searching for her husband. Back home, Cobain's mother, Wendy O'Connor, was instituting a search of her own, filing a missing.
They don't say that's the next day, but they're talking about Sunday, April 3rd right there. Unless they are talking about Monday and it actually happened on Monday and he was killed on Monday. But either way, it looks like Courtney was there and creating false alibis for herself from this early narrative.
Persons report with the Seattle Police Department on Monday. Word had reached her that her son had bought a shotgun. In the report, she described.
It's scary about how what we know now is like everything we look at from the past is now like it's just confirming what we now know.
Him as armed and possibly suicidal. But somewhat mysteriously, he was not considered dangerous. Back in LA, Courtney was voicing similar anxieties. "I'm really afraid for him right now," she told a friend. In the days that followed, the Seattle Police Department paid several visits to the Cobain's Madrona home. There was no sign of life. They would also check out the address on Seattle's Capitol Hill where O'Connor claimed her son bought his drugs. Again, however, there was nothing. Courtney remained in LA, wrestling now with both her own conscience and the calm advice of friends. Every instinct in her body was screaming she should return to Seattle to.
By the way, Chris Todd could be hiding that it happened on Monday, possibly twisting it, because Sunday night in the AM, right? Mark Lanigan's song. He's not saying Sunday in the AM, he's saying Sunday night in the AM. Sunday night going into the AM, which means Monday, April 4th. So that would make more sense that Courtney's there on that day. It's like this is the whole murder thing just revealed by listening to the early narrative. I want to go over it, just that part of it once more.
The following is from the June 1994 book Never Fade Away by Dave Thompson. On Sunday, April 3rd, according to a source close to the band, Courtney and Geffen arranged for private detectives.
And that would help Chris and the rest of these people cover up Thursday, April 7th, and the actual murder and what actually happened and who did it on the actual day.
To be hired to trace Kurt. It was their belief that he would probably head back to Seattle. Kurt was, in fact, already there. He arrived on Wednesday, March 30th, the same day he left the rehab facility, and contacted his old friend Dylan Carlson, guitarist with Olympia's band Earth, and the best man at Kurt and Courtney's marriage 2 years before. Kurt asked Dylan if he would go with him to buy a shotgun. He said he wanted it for protection, Dylan explained later, which seemed reasonable enough. So did Kurt's request that Dylan make the actual purchase. He was worried, Dylan said, that if he bought it in his own name, the police would simply come around and confiscate it. He and the Seattle Police Department had quite a history in that respect, as Dylan himself knew. The Taurus .380, which had been taken away just a couple of weeks before, had been registered in Carlson's name. It was also one of the guns which had been temporarily impounded the previous June. The pair set off for Stan Baker's gun shop on Lake City Way Northeast. Baker later remembered wondering, what the hell are those kids going to do with that shotgun? It's not hunting season. But it was not his concern either. Dylan purchased the weapon, a 16-pound Remington Model 11 20-gauge shotgun, and the two left the store. Dylan later asked Kurt if he wanted him to keep the rifle at his condo. Kurt told him no. That day was to be their last meeting. Where Kurt went from there may never be known for certain. Later on Wednesday, he was in a downtown gun shop buying a second box of shells. He did spend at least one night at a property he and Courtney had bought the previous year, a little north of Carnation, a township 40 miles northeast of Seattle. Courtney would tell Seattle's Post-Intelligencer newspaper that it looked as though he'd had company as well. Balled up by a fireplace in the still unfinished 2-story house which the couple were building lay a blue sleeping bag which she had never seen before. A nearby ashtray overflowed with cigarette butts, some she recognized as Kurt's brand.
Yeah. For some reason, I'm now thinking going back to Monday morning, which would make sense with the 2:32 thing. It would be the correct time, too. It wouldn't be that somebody had their watch back an hour or something like that on Sunday. And it places them all there with her fake alibi. And Tom already Well, Mark and Dylan already been there. Ed Callie.
But as for the others, she'd not seen them before either. On Monday, the day after the private detectives were taken on, Courtney was interviewed by the LA Times' Robert Hilburn. She spoke of the horror of finding Kurt spread out on the floor.
I've done that many times, even on Google, Facebook Marketplace. It's not good when it's like a woman and you want to buy something and you write hi, but you write ho instead, and you send it. You delete it right away. Let's see. 1 second. I wanted that thing. Fuck. Courtney's fake alibi for leaving the hotel in LA and apparently walking around LA looking for Kurt when she already knew that day that he was in Seattle on Saturday back at the house, ... Sunday night in the AM, ... Sunday night, ... is what he means, ... in the AM going into Monday, ... Chris Todd wants to keep the narrative that he put in his book so he doesn't look ridiculous and possibly to cover up the actual narrative of what happened, period. Regarding who, etc., period. He is staying clear of Tom Grant, the private investigator, seeing the body a day before the police did, period. He said in his first interview that's what happened, but he now doesn't talk about it that much, period. If Mark wrote Sunday in the AM, it would make sense it was on Sunday, ... But since the title of the song is Sunday Night in the AM, ... that's another breadcrumb. You guys, do you agree with that? I'm pretty sure it looks like it's a Monday. Even saying Easter makes it look like a ritual date. It makes it more popular. That could be, a twist. Basically, the day right after midnight, 2:32. Right after midnight, there's a darkness all over. Sunday night, going into the AM. So Sunday night in the AM doesn't make sense. It's like a riddle. I'm thinking like Jim Carrey, the Riddler. Literally like solving that. But when someone puts something in a book, they don't want to look ridiculous unless they do a refined version or whatever. Bitch. I know they're saying Joe says Sunday the 3rd, but even we know it was that long ago. You don't exactly remember when. It would make more sense. Doesn't it even make more sense with the weather or something on Monday? What was it that it made more sense with on Monday as well? Yeah, Bob, you were the one that was talking about that. What was that point that made more sense that it was Monday? Was it with the weather or something? Or the light and everything of the sky? Right, 2:32. And that would have been the time because the autopsy has proved that he was still alive. He was just unconscious when the gunshot went off. So if we're going by that song, Sunday night in the AM, Sunday night, 2:30 a.m. That Mark Lanigan, with his last album, he collaborated on with Skeleton Joe and Duff McKagan. Then that's the actual time that Kurt died, because he was unconscious but still alive when it went off. Basically, all we can do is link all this stuff together through the actual people involved that we have eyewitnesses saying are involved. It's all there. I guess that's the only way we can prove it, just by pointing it out. Oh, a downpour thing, yeah. Yeah, knowing this about the 5th now, I'm going to go over that video on the Kurt Cobain Club Mystique. The Kurt Cobain Club Mystique forensic meteorology.
Picture this.
So this was on Thursday, April 7th. He's saying it's rainy and everything. No, we have to find something else. The weather for, not the weather. So Joe said it got bright really quick, right? Or dark really quick? Daylight saving time. When was daylight savings time again? I know, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Let me see. When was daylight savings time in April of 1994 during Easter or whenever? Okay, so that was April 3rd, 1994, around 2 a.m. Does that mean it got really bright or really dark out of nowhere? No, it wouldn't suddenly get bright or dark. The sky doesn't change, only the clock changes. No, Joe said it got dark really quickly. Okay. Well, Joe said it got dark really quickly when something happened at this time in 1994 on April, ... It got darker earlier than it would every other night. When would that be? If someone said it got really dark really quickly in early April 94, the most likely time would be right around sunset, which was around 7:35 to 7:45. Oh, wow. So here, example, April 3rd, 94, sunset, about 7:37 p.m. Noticeably dark about 8:10 p.m., 8:15. What about on Saturday and Friday and all the other days? Did it get dark at the same time? No, it wasn't exactly the same time every day. Oh, wow. But it was like minutes in between of difference. So that's ridiculous. That doesn't really help then. Right. What about on Monday, April 4th, 1994? When was the sunset? In Seattle, when was it? Fuck. So around 7:50, 7:55. What about on Sunday? Sunday, 7:40. But it's not like Joe's outside the entire time either. He's in the basement. He's in Callie's room. Yeah, I'm using the AI. Again, I'm going to ask this. What does Sunday night in the AM mean if it's a riddle? Could that mean that the riddle means it was Monday morning? It doesn't click. It doesn't point to Monday morning. It just points to Sunday in the AM. Okay, but so when Sunday in the AM, 2:32 a.m. on April 3rd, 1994, is that an actual legitimate date and time? That's correct. Yes, Sunday. So April 3rd was a Sunday. But there's an important detail because that was the day daylight saving time started in the US and parts of Canada. What time was it in Seattle during that time? At 2 a.m., the clock jumped forward to 3 a.m., so 2:32 did not actually exist on that clock that night. So that could be the riddle in solving it right there. So what time would that actually be? If what happened was at 2:32 a.m., and the daylight savings happened at 2 a.m. in Seattle in April 1994, then what actual time would it be? Wow, so it would have been, if the event was after the time change was applied, it would be about 3:32 a.m. That's the Masons Freemason number. Oh, that would link with Mark Lanigan. He was into Freemasonry. It's like more of a cover-up secret right there. Was 3:32 or 3:22? Is 3:22 a Freemasonry number? It's famously associated with the Skull and Bones elite Yale Society, Order 322. Both of them are, yeah. So the thing they would be hiding there is it actually took place at 3:22, an actual occultic number as well, on Monday. That would link those numbers, yeah. 3:32 Monday morning, a.m. More of a cover up in the song. Lyrics. So I think there we have it. Yeah, I was wrong. We didn't know when Kurt died the exact time. Now we do. 3:32. And I just want to say this really quick. Unsolved Mysteries tips. Mark Lanigan. Tammy Hill. Joe Burns to Kurt, I'm sorry. Mark Lanigan's own book in Changed Testimony from 1994, his June 2nd Rolling Stone interview, compared to what he said in his book in 2020 and Sing Backwards and Weep. Let's continue with Tom Grant.
Have you back. If you just get in your car and wonder what we're talking about, this is Tom Grant. He was the first investigator to get on the scene when Courtney Love called him, hired him to find the missing Kurt Cobain. What he started to see pointed towards Courtney. And he continues to mount evidence, and it's just very compelling stuff. We're going to continue with that evidence and find out what happened, why the Seattle police didn't want to look at it. Here's another clip. This was at the stage where it was breaking nationally, and as I would have him on the show and others would have him on the show, lawyers were coming down for Courtney Love. Here's a little clip from the documentary you can watch free on YouTube right now, as a matter of fact.
Well, before you get into your point, though, hold on, Reed. Okay. We have forced, I do it 100% against our will, to read this to you. Right. Courtney Love's representatives objected to the contents of yesterday's show. Out of deference to Miss Love, we are not going to be following up today on any subjects related to Miss Love the way we might usually do so. We may have something further to say in the future. Thanks for listening and understanding. That's basically the sum of what we are being allowed to say on the air today.
We're trying to prevent you from going on big radio shows to expose this. It's almost like some kind of a cover-up going on. And I know from some of my coworkers in the business, they've had lawyers try to prevent you from doing the show.
So, about 15 minutes, I've got my notes on how long it was in the other room, but of you yelling at me, saying, basically saying, you're not worried about.
Sorry. That's an amazing revelation right there. So Sunday morning still, but 3:32 a.m. Right. I think it's specific like that. I think it is 3:32. I'm going to make some things on that just a sec. Some case photos of it. And Courtney would have wanted to see it the next day, which would explain Monday and why she created the fake alibi. So that means on Sunday, April 3rd, it would have been 3:32 a.m. It would have skipped forward how much? Exactly 1 hour. Oh, there's 1 minute behind in that, so that could be 3:33 a.m. So if it's not exactly skipping at 2 a.m., does that mean it could be 3:31 a.m. or 3:33 a.m. as well? So if what happened was at 2:32 a.m., it's written down that way, but it was actually at 3:32 a.m. and in Seattle on Sunday, April 3rd, the clock went forward an hour, but right at the 59-minute mark, dot dot dot. Then what time would it be? Since there was 1 minute less at 59 minutes, it turned into 3 a.m. So does that mean, like, what exact time? Okay, so 3:32 is correct. This is going with the correct date if we were to look into everything. The correct time as well. One moment, I'll be right back. I'll read the comment section 1 second. I'm going to put that as the background for this video. Check out the thumbnail for this live video now. You might see it. I keep making fun of Mark Lanigan's song. I don't know. I find myself singing like 2:30 in the morning or a.m. Parking lot of KFC. My chicken finger all blistered and blue. He's only 2 states away. Let's listen to that song. I put it on before. Well, we can play that little part of it. He's just a bullet away. He's just a car theft away. Oh, yeah. Living Dead, and that's with Duff McKagan. I'll see if I can pull that up here again. I will be able to. Let's see. YouTube.com. Sean. Got it stuck in my head now too. Let's see.
Living dead, confusion, sad. You were a child, the night, every solitary, how he lost his mind. Do you remember seeing the beast in his eyes? He's gone over the wall, and he's on his way home. Living dead. Your daddy's over the wall. Your daddy's on his way. Your daddy's coming home. He's only 2 states away. Delicate condition. Living dead. It took a boy away. It's just a car left away. It's just a phone call away. It's just a shadow away. I'm living dead. Nation.
And if you follow that really slowly, it looks like someone's getting hit in the head and grabbed in the neck area. Right, and if you pause it really quickly, where him and Duff McKagan are playing out a scene, it really looks like they're mimicking someone get hit in the head with someone and grabbed in the neck area. And then it looks like Mark at the end looking up like that's his mugshot, or what should be his mugshot. All throughout the video. You have to really slow it down. Let me find it exactly. So he's grabbing his forehead too, like something's hurt, right? And it would have been his forehead where he was hit in the head with something. And then got up, but then fell again and looks like he twisted his ankle possibly. Get the fuck out of here, remember, Kurt? See right there where he lifted something? Did you see that right there? Did you see that? Right, it could have been that. Did you see that? Doesn't that look like a gun? Or like he's pistol whipping it or something?
Living dead.
1 second, sorry.
It's just a shadow.
That could reference Kurt yelling at them to get the fuck out. Because that person is referencing Kurt Cobain, because he's the one with the hand on his neck. And then the guy falling over with the blonde hair, Duff McKagan. Kurt laughing, being sarcastic and sassy and not taking it seriously, even possibly. He has the same kind of ring on that Kurt had on his finger here, too, on this side. I guess this is Mark's famous mugshot that he wants for the world. This was the last album 4 years ago. A year before he died, probably less than, almost less. It's like one more month. Probably less. Hello. Let's go over. Let's see what we can find from the whole video, maybe. Yeah, the entire video? Okay. Let's try this.
Living dead, confusion. What you said, you're losing. You were a child, a nightmare ran wild. The voice of the dead from under the bed, calling every single night, every solitary night. Do you remember your daddy? How he lost his mind? Do you remember seeing the beast in his eyes? He's gone over the wall, and he's on his way home. Living dead, confusion in your head. You knew saying, your daddy's on the wall. Your daddy's on his way. Your daddy's coming home. He's only 2 states away. The animal led illusion. You've been led suspicion. Limitation. Delicate condition. Optical illusions.
Just a second. Fuck. Just a sec. Fuck. Oh, wow. Holy crap. Yeah, can you say her name? And I'll read it out loud. Yeah. I have to find that music video Mark Lanigan he did about being a killer and wanting to hide and run away and get away from it all. I found it. Are you guys ready to see that interview? That music video? He is. I know. Others are just going to see that without us even having to tell them that. This is called Beehive by Mark Lanigan. So it's expressing being a killer and being on the run. Oh, wow. Dear Rosemary by the Foo Fighters. Okay, I will. Are you ready for this? Y'all ready for this? It's Mark Lanigan's music video about being a killer and running away from it. It'll be glitchy, kind of. Just take in what you can see from it. You'll see all the images, even though it's going to be like that.
Scenes of dying light everywhere through a firecracker summer. Suddenly alone in a beehive with a spider crawl along my spine. Blue water down from the mountains wash across the killing floor. Blood rushing up from a fountain can't do a thing no more. I drag my chair to the window and listen to the swarm. Beehive, one that just gets me stoned.
Doesn't that actually remind you of his apartment life where there was rats and he had to kill them? See how he pours out the thing, and there's blood inside of it.
Scenes of dying love. In my head buzzes a bee's nest hanging down from above. Everywhere I look, it's a bummer. Gasoline, cool water, lying on a cooling board. Lightning coming out of the speakers. I wanna hear that sound some more. Press my body against the window in an electric storm. Beehive, it just gets me stoned when I'm living. Billroom and stone, it just gets me stoned.
See how he's using a gun here too with that?
Just gets me stoned.
The lyrics just to get me stoned.
Just gets me stoned when I'm living. Beehive, just.
So in that music video, just a sec. So in that music video, he was running away from blood and death that was always haunting him. The dead mice, the container of blood that was supposed to be full of something else, and then he threw it in the sink and started yelling and freaking out. And then going into and running away from that, and then holding a gun and shooting at things in the video game, and then running from that as well. His whole thing is about running from death and feeling haunted. Hmm. There's something in here too. I was like the Midnight Watchman or something like that.
Is it gold? I've been there as a blackout artist. Everyone trying to take my place. Is it gold? Is it gold? I was there as a midnight watchman.
Whoa, does his tattoo say 4-3 something? Oh no, 4-5. Okay.
Masquerade. I was there as a makeup artist. Everyone trying to point the blame. Is it gold? Is it gold?
Yeah. Even Dave Grohl was saying that. I'll read to you. I put it together in a PDF the other day. Dave Grohl on Mark Lanigan. Just a sec. Speaking to The Independent, Grohl, who worked with Lanigan in the rock group Queens of the Stone Age, said his music was so pure and so real. If he sang about pain, you believed it. And if he sang about love, you believed it. Grohl continued, if you know anything about his story or have read any of his books, you'll understand why he sang what he did and why he sang it the way that he did. There was nobody like him. In Seattle, he was much loved. Lanigan, who rose to fame as the frontman of the grunge group Screaming Trees, was a member of Queens of the Stone Age from 2001 until 2005. Grohl played with the band in 2002 and later in 2013. Speaking to the outlet, Grohl continued talking about when he first met Lanigan. When I first joined Nirvana, I was living with Kurt Cobain in our tiny apartment. One weekend, he said, hey, I'm going to go up to Seattle for the weekend and hang out with a friend. Do you want to come? He went up to stay with his friend Dylan, and we went to a show, Grohl said. Oh, there's that Dylan. I passed out on the couch and woke up in the morning and opened my eyes, and Mark Lanigan was sitting in a chair right across from me. His first words to me were, who the fuck are you? Grohl added, I had just discovered his first solo album, which is a fucking masterpiece. It's one of my most influential records. I didn't necessarily know him as a Screaming Trees singer. I just knew him as himself. It's heartbreaking. That's Dave Grohl on Mark Lanigan. Let's continue with the Tom video for now.
I don't Detectives might get in trouble. Yeah, we're just.
The website, CobainCase.com, but go to YouTube. We'll have on my website, If It Rock.
And I don't know where we would be today if it wasn't for those shows that you kept putting me on. You were the only one that just kept having me back over
Dave was really friends with Courtney Love before Kurt.
and over again.
I appreciate that. And I just, like I said, other shows, there was very few talk shows. I don't know of any, actually, that were committed to serve the rock culture, like I said last hour. And that, to me, was huge news. My listeners wanted to know about it. I had no reason to stop. You were legitimate. And like I said, I talked to the lawyers. Now, here's what happened on my end, and I think you people have been listening for a long time over the years and heard this story before. I don't want to use names, but there were two major bands that I used. Well, I can mention the band. There were two bands that I would have on all the time, and I still have on. Right around the time I was having you on, that the representative of these bands also represented Courtney Love. And at that time, she had Kurt's money, and she had a lot of power. She had a semi-successful career going on her own, and she had a lot of power. So it was, I called for Def Leppard, and I called this individual, who today, by the way, we're good friends, and he actually has the same opinion about Courtney that we have, and actually Tom Grant has. However, at the time, he didn't know that he was representing her. And so he wouldn't let me have Def Leppard. And I said, well, what do you mean, Cliff? And he says, well, you're having Tom Grant on, and, I handle Courtney right now, and we better pass. And he also handled, and still does handle, Metallica. Good guy. And about a year later, he got rid of her, she left, and so everything is cool. But that was the kind of pressure I was getting. We never got approached by lawyers. Never.
Nobody got. It's just that you were willing to take the chance, but those that had before, like Gil Gross and there was another radio show in LA that did bow to the lawyers, and that scared everybody too, and they ran a retraction. I think.
Was that Tom Likas?
Yeah. Right. But I was assured by people that worked at that radio station too afterwards. Somebody else actually called it and then passed the information on to me that this wasn't Tom Likas' choice. This was kind of forced on them too through their owners and their attorneys and everything, and they ran a retraction. That retraction actually backfired because they ran it for about a week, and it really just drew more attention to the case, and got more people interested in it actually. But that was the only time it ever really worked as far as running a retraction, but certainly never filing any lawsuits or anything that cost anybody any money.
And then shortly after, then they all started the books, the documentaries, Unsolved Mysteries, Dateline, they all. So what we're talking about now is well vetted in the mainstream. What I want to know...
I should mention, and it's in the documentary, just little snippets here and there, but I've been on Court TV twice. Mm-hmm. Court TV even played excerpts of the tape-recorded telephone conversations. And, Court TV, they're not on the air anymore, but they were for quite a while. And most of their narrators, their commentators, and their bosses, and everybody that worked for that show were all attorneys. So here was a group full of people who said, hey, we're not only going to have him on and let him talk about this, we're going to even play excerpts from the tape-recorded conversations that he made,
So, Tom,
it really did go a long ways, after we finally got back on.
It was, and the interest is just amazing. I mean, the amount of... Wow, this is before email, and I remember sending out packages to people of some of the paperwork of the case. It was really interesting, and it's continuing. CobainCase.com, and we're getting a lot of email here about that clip on YouTube. It's a long URL, read it out, but it'll be on our website, fmtalk1011.com. They go to CobainCase.com and find the link for that YouTube video, right?
Yeah, it actually links over to, we bought another domain name, projectunplug.com, and and then if you scroll down to the bottom there, you click on the link, and it will take you to the YouTube thing. So,
all right, when we come back from the break, this is the question: how come the police didn't look at the evidence, and if they looked at it, it didn't matter, and they ruled it a suicide? Why did they resent you?
Because
there must
it's
be
on
something
camera.
going on. We're going to talk about that. Do you think Courtney Love was involved with this?
That's the person
I'm
part.
using the word murder here because it's in a question for him, but gotta tell you, from all the stuff that I've seen and all the evidence and documentaries and stuff that Tom Grant has shared, there are some questions that got to be answered. So, Tom, tell me what happened with the police? Why did the Seattle police disregard you?
okay. Right before I get to that, let me
Oh, wait, before I even start, because an important thing I left out, just for all the horses there, and I'll give you plenty of time. The original show we did last time with Tom Grant is on a netcast. Oh, yeah, my dog's even here in the studio. We have a netcast on FMTalk1011.com of the last show. And if you Google Tom Grant, Alan Handelman show, pretty much however you spell my name, you'll find some of the old interviews that are archived on various websites. I'm sorry, Tom.
Yes,
Continue.
well, and you'll find that I misspelled Alan's last name on my in the documentary.
Oh, and the first name too, actually. I mean, you
Did
have
I
one
really?
Yeah, it's ALLAN.
I thought I did
Don't
that.
feel bad. Everybody does. That's why I named my website ifitrocks.com. It's so much easier because Alan can be spelled three ways and Handelman. But luckily, Google's really good. If you spell it wrong about asking it, you mean Alan Handelman, and they spell it right. But anyway,
Unfortunate thing, I can change that on my Final Cut Pro editing program here, but I can't do a whole lot once it's been put on YouTube.
I got you. Don't worry about it. You got the other episodes coming up, so
And when and your name shows up no matter how you spell it. I've experimented with that.
I don't care about me. I don't care. So what happened about the police?
I want to mention, first of all, you said, was Courtney Love involved? Few people realize this, and I was so totally naive when I started off going public with this. But if you ever listen to the Gil Gross show, the first show that covered this for 1 hour, I did not mention Courtney Love as a possible suspect. And somehow in my mind, I thought I would be able to pull this off without using her name and by just saying, well, I'm not going to name a suspect. I want to give you the evidence, but I'm not going to name a suspect. And I know that people would draw their own conclusions, and all fingers would end up pointing at Courtney Love. But I really thought that I could get away without using her name and without, directly accusing her. The very second show that I did, which was Tom Likas, when I tried that, of course, I realized right away from his response to me not wanting to answer that question, I realized that, okay, I'm going to have to say it because otherwise it looks like I'm just making all this stuff up and yet I'm not willing to back up what I'm saying. So from the second show on, I just had to come right out and express what I believed and the conclusions I reached. And so I haven't hesitated about that anymore. No. But my goal has never, in fact, to this day, I would say if I could push a button and have Courtney Love arrested and put in prison today, I wouldn't do it. My goal, in fact, I've set the bar really, really low. I've set it so low that there's no excuse whatsoever for them not to do this. I'm saying just change the verdict from suicide to undetermined. That's all I'm saying. If that's all that I ever accomplish in this whole process, is to get them to change the official findings from suicide to undetermined. And there's so much evidence that we provided, that it deserves that at the very least, no matter what you think of me or what I've said or what I've come up with or anything. You can't deny that it deserves that. But of course, I know that
to mainstream, to the mainstream press and media before, so I've never been aware of people being attacked, and crucified on that level. And I still, to this day, I don't know who Bono's wife is, if he has a wife or if he has a girlfriend. Yeah. And I can't help but feel that we've been scapegoated in a way. I feel I have a lot of animosity towards journalists and press in general, you know. But because it's happening to me, of course, I'm probably exaggerating it, but I still can't think of another example of any current band that has had more negative articles written about them.
Right.
A lot of it's just simple sexism. Yeah. Courtney is my wife, and people.
We should I should clip that where he says he doesn't want her arrested.
Could not accept.
Let's skip past the Courtney part.
On the second side of Flowers for Romance?
No, the single.
Oh, no, I don't have the single. Really? I love that album. That's my favorite.
Well, it's been re-released on CD in England. It's called This Track Next Track.
Really?
Yeah. And that thing about getting your head blown off, he said it multiple times in interviews with Kurt while looking at Kurt in a weird way. I have to find those again. Just like Nirvana interview full. Because you can just look at the transcript now. Where do they say shotgun? Where was it? It's in multiple interviews with him.
In just about a year, you guys have gone from kind of like the underground stage to the world stage. Have you had any time to enjoy your success?
Well, all the world's a stage, and misery and heartache. Only pain, suffering, and death. I wish I just would have blown my head off and gone straight to hell.
In just about a year.
And then there's more. So when you put it together, there's a lot more. Let's see if I can find it in this. Because there's multiple times in different interviews where he talks about that and he keeps looking at Kurt. That is there. Where do they mention a shotgun? Well, no, they don't, but they talk about guns here. That'll be interesting.
What kind and why? Do you carry a gun? What kind and why? M16 all the time.
Colt 45.
I swear, I don't have a gun.
I keep it in my teepee when we go out in the woods and sleep.
Do you?
Yeah. You never know. Out there.
Do you think that images of guns and violence in media and popular culture have contributed to the rise in violence?
Yeah, I think so.
Teens?
I think so. I think Sir Mix-a-Lot standing in front of his
exotic car collection, holding 2 handguns and sending out a message like, "Hey, look at all these cars, look at all this jewelry, look at all these guns, cool, Daddy-O," or whatever. And I think that was really irresponsible of him to do that. Do you think there's nothing romantic about guns? They're a tool, and they're in this world, in this country, things have just degenerated so much. It's just like you have to protect yourself because there's a lot of jerks out there. When I went to the gun shop to buy the guns, you should have seen the people in there buying this. This guy was looking at this. I just hate to judge people by their appearance, but I mean, there were some gangbangers in there just swooning over these 9mm. Oh man, check that out! They're going crazy. It's like, God, I was in there, Ernie and I were in there, just like, whoa, what are we doing in here? But we felt like we had a duty to be in there and protect our families and homes and stuff. And these guys were, it was just a novelty to them. Like, yeah, you got to have a gun, you know. It's scary, that kind of mentality, you know.
Do you think that, therefore, that like artists or creative people should have more of a responsibility to not glorify violence in their work? Or is there some? I mean,
well, if you have any common sense, you won't glorify violence, or you won't, you know, dwell on
wrong with raising the issue of violence, but glorifying it.
Yeah. Their irresponsibility is just like, I don't know, just a lack of responsibility. They don't really think about it too much. They're just like, they're wrapped up in that whole romanticism of guns and, hey, it's cool, you know, it's a male thing, you know, the ultimate empowerment, you know, ultimate man thing, gun.
I have to admit, it really is kind of fun to shoot guns. When I go out to the shooting range, it's an enjoyable sport.
Yeah.
I like to do it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fun. I mean, and it's a responsibility to know your gun too. You just shouldn't have it. You should really respect it.
If you buy a gun to protect yourself, and you don't know how to shoot it, you don't practice. You're not gonna hit the person if they're this close to you.
Yeah. And another thing is, like, I'm not a member of the NRA. I don't want to join the NRA. I don't agree with the NRA. A lot of things the NRA says, you know. I just have my own reasons.
Right. I'm done.
First thing, I heard that you were surprised when you heard that Rapido wanted to speak to you.
That's true. Surprised?
Yeah.
Excited, because it's one of our favorite television shows whenever we come into the UK.
That's good to hear. It's part of the jet lag ordeal.
Love you too, Alana. I just totally need a new coffee. I was gonna try to put that back here just a second. Now let's see, just a sec.
Jet lag ordeal.
Beyond the night that we get into town.
And you can't sleep, and it's pretty much the only thing worth watching. So.
And, you know, we're like watching international snooker.
It's better than snooker.
And then Rapido comes on, and we jump up and down. Yeah, Rapido.
Is there anything like that could compare in America that talks about music?
That Ed Sullivan Show, American Bandstand, MTV.
There's nothing that has the variety of Rapido.
Stay with me one sec. Good. You're sleepy, don't fall asleep.
dead of an apparently self-inflicted.
Walked up to this room about a shocking discovery this morning.
Suicide note was found.
This is a puzzling case, a very disturbing case.
It first got reported that Kurt was missing, and Courtney Love hired private investigator Tom Grant.
I'd been involved in missing persons cases before. Some red flags started popping up immediately. So I began recording every conversation I had with Courtney during the entire period that I worked for her.
My name's Oliver Holmes.
It could be made to look like a suicide.
People that I had do this, I paid.
I've walked into cases that looked like were suicides that turned out to be homicides.
Cobain's wife, singer Courtney Love, was in England on tour with her band Hole when the body was discovered.
As it is, she's inherited an estate worth tens of millions of dollars.
Did Courtney Love kill Kurt Cobain? Did she have a hand in any kind of conspiracy? And these are favorite topics of, fanatics.
There's nothing in the medical examiner's report or coroner's reports that could not have easily have been duplicated by murder.
It's entirely possible that a police officer, no matter how well trained, may not see it as a particular item of evidence.
Kurt Cobain was not barricaded inside the room. He did not leave his driver's license out. No one would believe that was a suicide note. Kurt Cobain was injected with 3 times the lethal dose of heroin. The media was getting this wrong.
I'm sure he's not in there.
I knocked for at least 5 minutes. If he's there, he would have answered.
All right. I just don't want to end up on the wrong end of a shotgun. Let's go.
Here we go.
Night, Atlanta.
Careful.
Good night, Atlanta.
Call out while you're in there. Call out. Say, Kurt, hello, Kurt. Make a lot of noise.
Kurt! Kurt! Kurt!
Kurt! You got a statue or something in here.
Can you still hear me? Yeah. It was his house that he was taking control of things. Got to remember that.
If we find it, we're going to have to take it, right?
which I can legally do since I bought it. It's in my name, so.
Here, could it be under the bed?
Might be.
Go. All right, let's go this way. All right, what is this? This man thing to you?
Oh, heck no. That's where they are. He kept saying.
Right. So that's why they moved in fairly quickly when she canceled the cards, and he came right back to where they wanted to lure him.
Someone stole them, but they've been sitting there. These are what he OD'd on in Rome.
Well, she'd want us to take those.
Yeah.
And she did that on Saturday night, going into Sunday morning, which fits in line with the Sunday.
Which, if you keep them?
Yeah.
Are those illegal if we get stopped?
No.
They're not?
No, they're prescription from England. They're over the counter in England.
Are they legal here?
Yeah, they're completely legal. They're like.
What are they used for?
They're sold as a sedative for sleeping ailments, and sometimes they're given to people.
And if we get pulled over, you're not going to get arrested for having them?
No, they're fine.
Wow.
All right, well, it's obviously not here, the shotgun.
No. I don't know where it would be.
Is there anywhere else? Okay.
Doesn't this movie become so much more obvious that it's a cover-up without trying to cover up too much? Like Tom was he was put in a compromising position, and he's trying to defend himself basically in the whole movie up until probably about here. All right. And now we're going to hear about Tom's father and how he never... Oh, fuck. Shit. Are we still here? Can you hear me? Yeah, you can't hear me, can you? I stopped the video. It'll refresh after a bit and it'll be okay. Can you not? You can't hear me.